Hey, it's Crumbs. You're lost? How do you not know where you are? It's Thorin's channel.
Just over a month ago, my LEC talk show Elitists United was cancelled, now never to return. This is a video I'm making for fans of that show. I certainly don't feel obligated to make it, but I thought they might like to hear my side of the story in light of some of the things that have been revealed. I'd rather actually not have to make a video, and certainly not in this manner. Maybe I might have made one where I explained how I was going to transition to a different show, some of my thoughts on talk shows in general, like I have a concept coming up for some thoughts on Loco Doco and how that show ended, but that will be handled in an entirely different manner. I personally would rather not be in the business of airing dirty laundry, having to get into what will essentially for some people just become drama, just becomes something they can just get into with all personal information and details about people's characters that I don't or do like, basically revealing private information. I'm a private individual, and I don't think you should air dirty laundry in public. I think it feeds into the need for salacious drama that brings out the worst in the community. It just ends in people picking who they like, who they don't, who's right, who's wrong, who's good, who's bad. There's very rarely any grey area, any nuance. But my co-host Veteran's actions have smeared my name, admittedly with a small amount of people who may have seen it on Twitter, but nonetheless. And we'll get to that later, he has revealed information that paints a one-sided, incomplete picture, which actually, quite frankly, is mildly damaging to my career. So what I'll do is I'll simply lay out my history and relationship with Veteran and why I decided to end the show. So the past of me and Veteran is very key to understand because it's different from some of my other co-hosts on some of my other shows. Me and Veteran are not friends. We were never friends. I would consider us work colleagues on the show, mild acquaintances we sometimes DM'd on Twitter. In fact, he had frequently in the past replied to my tweets in a snide manner, either towards me or trying to tag in on whatever I'm saying and put some snide comment in. Basically what I considered back then, this is before I worked with him, attention-seeking behaviour. And so people like him, I ignored. I even had him blocked, I think, at one point in time on Twitter. Before I did, years later, a big reset where I unblocked a whole bunch of people. And he was one of the people that got unblocked. And he kept about 8 people blocked at the time. And what happened was, off the top of my head, I think it was a show, I think maybe when I was doing Narrative Wake with Kelsey, she'd worked with him at H2K. I think I've got my timeline right here. And she suggested him to come on the show. So I was like, okay. I mean, I had seen some of his work, and this is years later. I thought, yeah, I'll give this guy a chance. He's someone where I didn't really know him. I actually don't really know him that well overall now. And I just know a little bit about him and his character from his behavior. So he's someone where all I knew about him before I'd had him on my shows was that he did 2 articles that I enjoyed that I actually thought were pretty good back in 2015 for the Score Esports. There was one about Froggen, who at the time was on Elements, and there was one about Odoam there, who was kind of the sleeper rival to Hooney on Fnatic when Fnatic was the 18-0 Fnatic. I had him featured on my shows as a guest, I think something like 14 times. He'd been on when we did Thorin and Loco versus Worlds. He featured a bunch of times. We had him on Narrative Wake a whole host of times. He was then on Listen Loco a bunch of times. Then it came to Elitists United. This is a show that I made. I came up with the show name, but it was requested by Veteran. He actually asked me, do I want to make a show with him about LEC? And the implication was, as I've done with many other people, Loco Doco, Kelsey Moser, LS, other people out there, Froscorian, sometimes I'm known, if I like people, if I think they do good work, to be willing to do a show where they're the star of the show. It's a platform, a vehicle for them. And so I made this show as a vehicle for Veteran in a similar vein to as I'd done with Froscorian on Incoming Aggression back in, I think it was 2015, right? I wanted to help establish him as a legitimate go-to expert for his region because he has very good knowledge about the European region, in particular also about the ERLs, which obviously most LEC analysts don't even follow. I wanted to showcase his strengths on the show. Another thing I've often tried to do with people like him is people like him, LS, they don't come off very good on Twitter, and sometimes as guests they come off just way too obnoxious. And so if you give them a show and you give them time to talk and you kind of learn and adapt to them, you can showcase, you can translate what they're saying to the layman, you can make it take some of the rough edges off, as it were, and encourage them to get comfortable in that setting and not come off as obnoxious, so that suddenly people aren't being turned off by the persona, they get to enjoy the actual content in that case. And if you're an analyst, they need to get to the content, otherwise It's just going to be, they're just going to think you're shit, even though actually you might be one of the best, as in this case he is for the European region. So I also hoped, much like with Froscorin and Income Aggression, why that was a short-run show, but a very successful one, that I could get him the job he wanted. In the case of Froscorin, that was to work on the LPL broadcast. In the case of Veteran, that was to get him a job as an LEC coach or as an analyst on the broadcast. So we did 40 episodes of Elitists United. I thought it was a pretty good show. It wasn't my best show, but it was a pretty good show. I thought it much improved about a third of the way in when I kind of like adapted to Veteran a little bit, figured out how it would work in terms of the pattern on the show. A lot of the EU guests are less talkative than the North Americans. They don't have much of a media presence. So I had to kind of figure out the balance again, just like I did with all my shows. And, you know, as I say, part of doing a show is adapting to your cohorts, figuring out their strengths. It's like having a teammate in sports. You've got to figure out how to use them if you want to win as well. So why did the show end? Well, first I have to establish my relationship with Veteran. To this day, I'm not friends with Veteran. Not just because of this incident. I was never friends with Veteran. Outside of just DMs arranging the show or him just asking one or two small things, I might have had 2 or 3 actual conversations with this guy pretty much ever, except for, you know, the odd thing where after a show you message and say, what do you think of that? Oh, it was a bit not talkative. I've only met him in person once ever when I went for a drink with him in LA during Worlds. And he's just a colleague. Like, he's a guy where, yeah, I worked with him on this show. That was it. I was doing the show because I thought it was a fun show. It was a good show. I was helping him with the platform. He was helping to be part of that fun show most of the time. But here's the thing I need people to understand, because if you don't understand this, you're not going to understand what I'm attempting to do when I make these shows for other people. Not just shows that are mine and I can rotate anyone else. And you notice, if I don't want to work with Loco, I don't just kick out Loco and go rename it, listen something else. I'm not relaunching Elitists United. That was a name I made for Veteran. Income Aggression was for Scoring. Narrative Wake was Kelsey. Listen Loco was Loco Doco. LS versus the World, or the People versus LS was the one for LS. But what I need to understand is, a motivating factor is to give these people a platform, to give them more of a spotlight in the community. Because if you understand a concept called opportunity cost, so if you make $10 doing something for an hour, but you also had another job on the side where you could have done the same hour and worked for that and gotten $100, then actually to do the job for 1 hour, your opportunity cost is you lose $90. You make $10 overall, but you lose $90 because you could have made $100 doing something else. In ad revenue and the total money that I make from the show Elitists United, it pays around 1/10 of what I make when I do premium content that I get paid one of the highest rates in the industry for. It makes about 1/4 of what I make from a written piece that I do for other people in the industry, where I sell my labour as a mercenary, not to the highest bidder, but to someone who's willing to pay well. I do shows like Elitists United because I enjoy the discussion. And I enjoy helping people grow. Like, you believe it or not, I know if people have never tried this before, it's pretty rewarding to see someone where you think they've got potential and you get to see them reach some of that potential. You get to see them turn around their reputation. That's pretty satisfying when that person's someone who was often misrepresented or maligned or misunderstood, but now they have a chance to show another side of themselves, to show more of themselves, to be more well-rounded, to explain themselves. Similar to how I often enjoyed that aspect of my reflection series when I would do them with Forgiven or Double Lift or SOAS, people who at times could be unpopular, could be misrepresented and maligned, and you would get a chance to show, hey, there's more to this guy. It's not as simple as you think when you've seen him just for a few minutes on a different type of broadcast. So I also, by the way, did a few episodes of a show called Elitists on the Line with him, where after LEC ended, I would play the host and take questions live from Twitch chat on Veteran's stream, where he made all the ad revenue, and people would come on the show and discuss the topic with Veteran. The whole point of that show, by the way, was I saw so many people on Reddit argue against him and say he was wrong and didn't know what he's talking about. And I thought, well, if you guys are so brave, I hope you come on this show. Come and argue with him. See if you can hang in the arena. Debate with him. Don't just sit on the sidelines making comments from the peanut gallery. Sadly, most people didn't. It was mainly people who just came on to have a discussion and who were fans of his, actually. Most of those haters on Reddit, you never see them. They just crawl back under a fucking rock somewhere with their IG flare. Just a little joke there for anyone who's a content creator. One thing people need to know is another key thing is that was another show that he asked me to do, and I obliged. Even though, by the way, that show actually goes against a fundamental principle of my career and my life. Not in the sense of like a violation of some epic thing, but just a way that I live my life and I direct my life, which is that I choose personal freedom over everything else. Money, status, doesn't matter what it might be. I choose personal freedom over how cool it would be to go to an event. The only shows that I do at set times each week on a set day, live, are the ones that pay me for the privilege of my time at a handsome rate. Those shows I'm willing to do at those times in that way. Now, I would sometimes make time for local, but even then I told him we have to agree that it can change days, etc. Here, at least on the line, I had to be there after LEC each time. People don't know, I don't watch LEC live usually. I consume VODs after the fact, so I was giving up part of my time there again to help this guy. And for that show, I'm making the ad revenue from the VOD, which is even less. Let's say it's a third of the Elitists United revenue, which by the way is nothing crazy. So other than that, I want to be able to schedule things around my life, my desires, my dreams. But you know what? For the premise of this show, it made sense. So I don't begrudge him that. I do now in light of what's happened. But at the time, it made sense to do that. I also wanted again to emphasize the role that because we started, the second post-game lobby ended, I wanted it to be that people would see him as part of that kind of a post-show analysis and have the chance to directly react to games. And therefore, he would also be emphasized and considered for the role of post-game analyst and build up his stream where I featured it, because that's the kind of job I think he would be ideal for. I don't necessarily now in like some of the things I've seen and some of the things he's done politically. I think I've probably just handicapped him sadly in that sense, but that's his own choice. He's his own man. He can do what he pleases. So despite him not being a friend, I'll also point out that I have on a number of occasions looked out for his financial well-being. I've checked in on his condition because, I mean, if you've ever seen Elitists United, he would always be in these like dodgy-looking Airbnbs that looked quite frankly like low-rent bed-sits at times with semi-bad internet, bad lighting. I used to think, fucking hell, like this guy should be in a much better position this with his knowledge if he could really make something of it. So I was always trying to see, could he get a better job? I even helped him directly get work at Deserto where I work. I recommended him and gave him my highest recommendation. I even had a series, he didn't know this. Oh, I know, he knows the basics of this. I had a series planned in which he would have featured which is now canned, by the way, where it would have featured his analytical content in a way where I presented it and got it over to the layman and drew people in with my persona again. And by the way, for that feature, I was going to make a ratio of 1 to the 3 or 4 that he would make. That was exactly what I demanded of Deserto and told them, I don't want me to be the person who gets the most money here or even half. I want this to be about the analysts getting paid and I'm there to present them. And so I won't be as involved. And yeah, we'll use my name, but that's to get those guys over to the crowd in the wrestling terminology. So I essentially, by the way, offered to give him money. Forget lend, give him money when the lockdown occurred. Because I thought this guy, I don't know what jobs he's doing. Like, I mean, I know he was getting paid for work like EU Masters. There are no lands anymore. And by the way, I've done that for a handful of other people in this scene. I won't mention who, it's none of your business. Now, the reason I'm setting all that up is, we do not have an even relationship. We weren't friends. He wasn't someone who's done lots of things for me. It's not my most popular show. It's a show that had an opportunity cost attached to it. And I would say I went above and beyond the call of duty as a colleague, as a co-host. So now let's talk about something else that happened before I ended the show, which is I'd previously had an incident with Veteran, which already set off a red flag in my mind. It was on the Elitists on the Line show, the live show, and on a live show, I deleted this from the VOD later, and it's referenced, by the way, in the DM log he leaked, which is why I'm bringing it up now. On this show, I brought up that Monty had been fucked over by Riot when they banned Renegades. Anyone on Reddit, by the way, I don't read Reddit. I don't care what they think. So anyone who thinks, oh, it's not true, but look, Riot said this. Riot are a bunch of liars. You've already seen what they did in that sexual harassment scenario. If you choose to believe them, that's on you. You're the one co-signing liars at that point in time. So what I'll say is this. When I brought up that Monty had been fucked over, rather than just let it go, Veteran then tried to correct me, explain that Monty's a bad guy and was responsible for what happened and he isn't just going to let me say that. Went on this mini rant about what he knew, which by the way was all rumour and nonsense. So on the show, once he finished his rant, I counselled him then and there that he was speaking entirely out of turn. He didn't know the details of the case. He was going off essentially industry rumour and the official, utterly bullshit, stitched up story that Riot put out. And the problem with this is, this actually is another couple of serious character flaws that Veteran has shown from my experience working with him and briefly talking with him. One, he is very hasty to judge others in a harsh way that they seemingly can never come back from. Secondly, he speaks authoritatively about details, sometimes private details about people's lives and careers that he doesn't have the facts of. even though it's a serious topic, a man's reputation. And as a result, sometimes unknowingly, although he must know that he doesn't have the information or a complete picture, smears the person's reputation and doesn't seem to show any contrition or remorse for it. Now, I cut that story out of that VOD, so you only saw it if it was live, and he actually privately later apologised to me for it. So I thought, you know what, fair enough, that's fine, we'll let that go. You made a mistake. But this will be relevant 2 more times in this discussion. So one of the things that basically caused the environment in which I cancelled Elitists United was Veteran and others on Twitter going after Kays, the guy who was formerly an analyst for Fnatic and Team Liquid and more recently Origin. Now, I barely know Kays. He's not a friend of mine. I haven't talked to him very often. I've had the odd DM with him. I've never had a conversation with him outside or something like, I think he's had, 2 appearances on my talk shows. I've had some short DMs with him. Yeah, some of those were all right. My interest in him is solely as an analyst and a thinker about League of Legends, much as I first came to encounter Veteran, LS, Dom, Loco. That's how I get interested in these people, how they think, how they communicate their ideas, if they have a different way of seeing the game. But I will say, my interest is still in him as an analyst. I think there's a lot more going on there than people make out, and people have taken his personality and allowed that to pretend that he doesn't know anything about the game. This guy's track record's pretty fucking good. So anyway, but whatever, he's not a mate of mine. I haven't even talked to him since this incident. I think maybe one time about Origin. But I will say, an issue that has caused me so much trouble in my professional career is that I despise unfairness. I hate it when I see someone misquoted or their words taken out of context or lies said about them. I mean, I can tell you right now, on the political front, this has caused me enormous heartache. When I've appeared by other people painting the picture to be supporting or defending people I don't support or defend, but who I simply was trying to come out as a voice of reason against a baying crowd that just wanted blood and to paint someone as evil and blame. And so when I then say, I don't know that they really did do that, or I disagree with that, or have you thought about this way that they're saying it, or why is everyone making it seem this one way? Then what happens is a concept called psychological transference occurs, and they act like I'm the one saying the thing. I'm the one who did the thing, and I'm supporting the person. Therefore, I'm as guilty as them. And then I get the attacks. I get called out and told I should be fired from esports. So even in spite of all that, and the toll it's taken on my psyche, I didn't care. I always stood up for what I was right, regardless of who it was even. There were even times I did this for people who have lied about me and been unfair to me because it was the right thing to do. And that's the thing about principles. Principles aren't just there for people you like or when it's convenient. They're supposed to be there all the time. So I noticed that whenever Kays would tweet his opinion, primarily on his own Twitter account, by the way, which is key, that's his space to give his opinion. Sure, others are then free to reply, but it's pretty obnoxious if the replies are people who aren't there in good faith. They're just there to insult him and correct him constantly. This is where, by the way, people famously would always say, that's what you do. I don't. Go and look at my Twitter behaviour. I very rarely ever reply to anyone I'm not on friendly terms with, and except if it's banter. If I insult someone, I just put it on my Twitter. I don't tag them. I don't reply to them. It's up to them if they want to find that tweet. If they don't, if they want to have me muted or whatever, they need never find that tweet. So that's a different distinction I always make in my own career. So I noticed that the people, well before Kays tweeted anything political, by the way, were always attempting to correct him and hector him like they were his fucking pater. Look up the word. Like they were his dad or something. So whatever he said, they'd just twist it and make it seem stupid or ignorant or wrong, even if the intention he expressed, the whole point of communication, clearly didn't align with that and wasn't presented that way. And they just wanted to present him as some dumb American who knows nothing about anything. Forget League of Legends, anything in the world. And how can he ever dare talk? That was like the vibe I was getting. And I would just see this, and it was always the Twitter analyst crowd. A lot of them work as coaches, analysts, they appear on desks and stuff now. I mean, I've helped many of these people, and quite frankly, I regret giving some of these people platforms on my shows now, because I actually think that if you look at what they've done, yeah, in this scenario, they just saw Kays' tweets as like chum in the water and they're the sharks who are just going to go and destroy this motherfucker. So again, it's one thing if they just tweeted their opinion on their account and just left it at that to their followers. No, they had to go directly at him, attack him, bully him, essentially kind of bully him. Not in an explicit way. It's not ridiculous. Like he could look away from the screen, he can mute. Yeah, all that. We get that. But this is just not nice behaviour in the community. Now listen, you don't have to be nice in the community, but if you want to associate with me, there's certain principles you've got to stick around with. And quite frankly, Veteran was among this crew. These were people he associates. And He wasn't actually the one saying most of this in public, but he would like and retweet posts. So then along came Kays with his, ill-advised political tweets. He got banned for Soliko for bad behaviour, and OG used this as a precedent to fire him. By the way, I would just say, that's actually even more suspicious in light of the fact that the Astralis group, months earlier, had a tough financial position where their stock is super low, and they've had 30% pay cut requests that they've made of employees of their company, that, guess what, this guy was costing a lot of money, and you need to cut the budget somewhere, and your team's not doing well anyway, and now he has bad PR. It's an easy out, isn't it? Easy way to fire him at that point in time. So, in my opinion though, it's kind of fucked up to cheer on someone being fired, especially if you know they're good at their job. And you must know Kay's at least decent at his job. You don't trip over and accidentally have that success with a bunch of teams. We've all been in his position. We've all been people grinding in the industry, trying to make it out being our dream to have the big job one day. So then you're going to be part of injustice and unfair behaviour and paint this guy as scum. I don't want to associate with people like that, and especially not with behaviour like that. You can correct behaviour, but if you make the behaviour consistent, that's just who you are as a person at that point in time. So it's a matter of principle. As I said earlier, I actually regret platforming some of those Twitter analysts, and they will never again feature on my shows if I have knowledge they participated in that behaviour. I've actually previously counselled privately a number of my protegees or the people I kind of adopted. Because if you don't notice, when I pick these guys up, I sort of, because I see potential in them, I see where they go the wrong way, I see some of myself, I kind of treat them like a little brother. That's what I usually try to do. Not veteran as much. I mean, I did look after him financially if I could. Never actually sent him any money, but I tried to check that he was okay. The other ones, Loco, LS, I actually did have that kind of relationship. So we've always been fairly close, and I'll probably never be on the outs with those guys. So people like Loco, LS, whenever they had little petty, stupid arguments, usually with each other, and seemed to hate each other for no good reason, veteran included in this actually, I always wanted them to look past those differences and see what would be accomplished if they worked together, if they went on shows and had those discussions as like a respectful debate, and that if you can respect someone else having a different philosophy and a different outlook on the game, look what you can accomplish. You know what? Even though it has nothing to do with me, aside from maybe a little bit of influence, or just putting them on shows where they've seen each other, it's been an actual joy to me to see Dom and LS co-stream and now do shows together and embrace this mentality. And to some degree, even when Loco was bringing Veteran onto his shows and he was choosing him as a guest to come on, even though, by the way, Veteran had said many petty things publicly about Loco and made him a target of seemingly constant scrutiny, again, as though he's someone that, like, he's the judge of Loco Doco now, but then expects to work in an industry where people are Loco Doco's friends and like Loco Doco and respect him. I mean, it's just silly behaviour. Now, it's worth noting, I had never actually taken Veteran aside like that, though, and had that discussion with him. He's one of the few people I hadn't, because we only worked on the one show, and I didn't have that personal relationship with Veteran, unlike Loco and LS. This is why, if you notice a few months back, I was involved as a peacemaker, a mediator, in the LS and Amazing incident where they were tweeting backwards and forwards, and it had gone way past DEFCON 0 or 1 or whatever the fuck it is. And thankfully, I was able to get that resolved with a polite apology on both behalves, accepted, and we were able to just move on. So that's the way I would hope that people who I know are legit and aren't bad guys can deal with things and move on in their careers. So I'd planned to have an episode of Elitists United with Kays, and Veteran basically blacklisted it. He just said, I'm vetoing that, I don't want him on. Again, not information I want to reveal, and I would never have revealed it, but this context is key to the fragment that Veteran has now published to paint me in a negative light without my permission. So not long after he said he was vetoing Kays, I asked him what you then see in the leaked logs, which, by the way, I'll link in the description box of this video. A brief overview goes like this. I asked him what Kays had done to him personally. He explains actually a bunch of things apparently Kays did. Now, even though, by the way, I actually think that's legit, we'll get to that in a second. I then basically say that the problem is his behaviour reminded me of how Veteran used to behave to me in the past, and that I wouldn't have done shows if I'd known he'd behaved that way and crossed a certain line. And that he'd misspoken about Monty in an entirely inappropriate manner on a public show, no less, a live one that I can't even edit the VOD from, in terms of it had a live aspect as well. So some people probably saw that. And it made me think that if I hadn't worked with him now, he'd probably be saying the same things about me now. If I hadn't took him on shows, he'd probably just be telling lies about me and telling industry rumours and spreading smears about me in the industry. And it made me just feel disgusting. Like, why am I promoting someone like this? Why am I working with someone like this who, even one of my friends, he's going to do that? The implication being, by the way, that he might have even told the Monty story in a space where I couldn't control its release or reply to him, and in doing so, hurt a personal friend and colleague of mine who has never done anything to Veteran to my knowledge. That's how petty this person is. So I also pointed out that it's a poor way to view people in the industry as linear vectors for League of Legends knowledge, and so if they're not at your level, they do nothing. And that he's got to overcome this resentment, because it's something I had earlier in my career, a lot earlier, where when other people are in the position you want to be, or they're getting a great job and you don't have a great job yet, or they're succeeding and you're not, you might feel resentment, you might feel jealousy, you might feel bitter, you might think that should be me, he doesn't deserve that. That's a terrible mindset to have, in my opinion. It won't get you anywhere. It will actually consume you, and it will erode your soul for a while. Not entirely, but it'll take something away from you that you have to build up again. I also said, essentially, this is the implication, that he was a hypocrite for working with me and then not constantly suggesting that I know nothing about the game, because compared to those people, I do know next to nothing. I don't. I know different things, but again, in veterans' model of the linear thing. The point being, well, I have a platform though, don't I? And I help veteran, don't I? And I'm more well-known, and that's obviously why he doesn't do it. That he's done this kind of thing himself to Loco, Dom, Monty, LS. I think he's done it to all of them, quite frankly. And that I would hold him to his standards, and that Elitists United was cancelled. Veteran then gave me a closing statement that he said it wasn't about game knowledge, ignored a bunch of the stuff I said, and then told me that, I'm going to throw it all away over the case stuff, and then that was it. That was the end of the conversation. He then did a tweet publicly that said Elitists United is cancelled, I think it was the following day, and leaked that log of the conversation I just described to you. Now, I had made no announcement of the show being cancelled. I had said nothing about him publicly or privately related to this conversation. He just came out and leaked it. Later, he leaked that I had blocked him as a result of this behaviour, utter betrayal, and as if that wasn't reasonable action somehow. As if someone attempting to smear me publicly and without my permission show information that I have no interest in showing to the public, and they have no right to know, that I can't even block him now. Apparently that's unacceptable behaviour in this guy's mind. And that I'd done it all. He also goes on to try and explain what I'm thinking in my mind without ever talking to me. He goes on to explain that I did it all over a single tweet, which he linked, and that everyone I talked to about that tweet disagreed with me, that it painted me as a racist. He then also linked to a tweet where I'd leaked something from a private conversation myself, we'll get to that later, to justify his behaviour. Now here's my side of that. Fucking massive setup, but let's do this. Essentially, I ask him what Kays has done to personally harm him, since I'm not friends with him, so I don't know his history with Kays. He'd apparently mentioned it briefly, I think, I'm not sure, before, after a show or something. But admittedly, though, I will say, when I see his reasoning here, his reasoning's good. Like, I wouldn't have a person like that on a show again. I think it's entirely fair to veto him from a show appearance. In fact, if my co-host in general just says I'm vetoing someone, even someone I want, I always accept it. And then I just say, right, they're vetoed, we go on to the next person. Same as I would expect them to honour my behaviour in the same way. But it was his behaviour towards Kays, as I explained, that had stuck with me. Because it reminded me of how him and the other cadre of Twitter analysts behaved to me back in 2014 and 15 when I was just a new guy in the scene. They always had a snide remark directly replied to my comment. They would always attempt to correct me as if their opinion, not even talking facts here, their opinion would always be more correct than mine, and I'm an idiot for having my opinion. But you know what? When given chances to come on shows and get promoted later on, they were all of a sudden friendly to me, and suddenly they didn't insult me on Twitter in this way. Now, I've had a couple of people I worked with and did shows with in the past, and, we're talking a number of years ago, this isn't someone recent, and I would later find out, because for some reason this current generation is seemingly so disloyal and backbiting, that they leak stuff about what each other says, even their friends, that some of them literally said in conversations that these people pasted to me, I never asked for, that their friends and they had conversations that said, people in the industry, that they were using me. And they just openly admitted it and even laughed about it with each other. That their friends should attempt to cozy up to me and get promotion, that it'd be good for their career, would really give them a little bit of a pop, a little bit of a boost on social media. Some were literally even entitled enough to imagine they were entitled and deserved to be promoted by me, and would say stuff like, why isn't Thorin asking me on his shows? I should be getting that spotlight like insert X other person that I promoted. Now, as I said, I had ignored, muted and blocked Veteran in the past on Twitter. So I went back and thought, what was he saying about me then in general? Like, I know he's part of that group, but I can't remember anything specific. I'm sure it was just snide remarks or whatever. I went back and checked and saw not only the snide manner, but a tweet where the same year I was fired from a CSGO major for making a bunch of comments about Poland and Polish culture. He'd mocked me about that tweet, implying within the tweet that I'm racist against the Polish. That was basically the punchline of the tweet. That was the joke, referencing that incident where in 2014 I was edgy on a StarCraft talk show about Poland, mixing a bunch of jokes with stuff that I'd literally been told by legendary Polish esports figures about their country, and also calling the country out for its history of racism in sports culture. The World Cup had only been 2 years earlier, I think it was at that point in time, and this had been an issue that had been raised publicly in the general consciousness at the time. Now let's establish something. I only ask two things when I work with people in this context of me promoting them as part of a show. They show that they respect the work that we are undertaking, and they don't betray my trust. I'm not doing this for fame. I don't care if it's Dom, LS, Local, I'm not doing it just to get famous working with these guys and having a great show. And I have a little quote along those lines. It goes, attention is a claim for idiots. I'm not about that. In Loco's case, by the way, he triggered the former principle, which is he wasn't committed enough to the show, which, by the way, I think is an issue that you've seen has nothing to do with me. And you've seen when I removed myself from the equation entirely, it's basically proven to be his issue with FaceCheck, and now he's decided to tap out of content. I'll actually do a separate video on the topic of Loco, someone I have a much better relationship with, where I think I can show where people have maligned and misrepresented him and why I actually would have liked to have done another show with him. There's also the point that in that show, we had a bad relationship dynamic in light of the individual I know beyond his show persona that you don't know. I know he wasn't enjoying that show. That was hurting him, some of that banter. And I told him many times to quit. He wouldn't. He just wanted to keep doing it, maybe because he did want to get attention or be famous or get a better job from it. I don't know what it was he wanted out of it. So I basically told him at the end, I have to cut this off for both of us, mate. I can't do this. But again, I'll talk about that in a separate video. Now, Veteran violated the latter of the issues. He petulantly leaked the log, attempted to get reconnaissance information about why I'd cancelled the show from someone else, I know this, rather than simply ask me, and then leaked that information he got via reconnaissance as an act of revenge, hoping presumably to turn people against me and paint me, someone who's done untold amounts of things for him, as a villain who's doing unfair and unjust things. And how dare I cancel this show with him? What a rotten person I must be, eh? So the problem with that picture, or at least the picture he painted, is as follows. Firstly, it was not simply that tweet that caused me to cancel the show, and I never told or implied that to anyone. In fact, in my post to him, I point out that it was looking into his Twitter behaviour after his behaviour towards Kays, which I'd already disliked, and finding that he'd publicly mocked me as a racist. Not that alone, but that it meant I felt betrayed for even having done a show with him in the first place. I wouldn't normally do that. Now, did he attempt to apologise or ask me what had bothered me in this particular case about his Twitter behaviour? Because I didn't reference that tweet directly. He didn't know about that tweet. No. He just told me that I was throwing the show away for Kays and we went our separate ways. Or so I thought. Had he ever apologised, by the way, sincerely, the show would likely have been savaged and we could have continued on. I hope that this would be actually a learning lesson for him. It would correct some of his behaviour and it would set him on a better path that the LSs and Locos of the world are on, or at least were for one point in time in the case of Loco. Problem is, his behaviour in response to my point showed me that he was exactly the character I feared he was based on that behaviour. Both in the DM, refusing to acknowledge any of my point about that Twitter behaviour, and then publicly leaking the log and attempting to spy on me through other people who are mutual acquaintances. So as soon as I saw him leak the DM, I knew I'd made definitely the right decision cancelling the show. People will always show you who they are when they can't benefit anymore from what you do for them. I mean, I would just say this, contrast Veteran and Loco. So I left Loco's show as well. I haven't worked with Loco since. Yeah, I've had him as a guest on a show. No, maybe I haven't actually. Oh, I think we had him on Summon Internet. That's not the truth, actually. Now, to my knowledge, Loco Doco has never badmouthed me since then, has never been rude to me or leaked anything to anyone. Similarly, I have publicly explained, and I even coordinated with him a series of tweets where we said that we were leaving on amicable terms and that we would work together less frequently, but still on occasions in the future. And I'm not going to get into it now, I'll mention it in the other video, but I actually always planned to wait a year, rethink things, come back, do another show with Loco from a different slant to make our old relationship revitalise it, reinvent it, and not spark up the negative elements of it, and actually re-establish his credibility as an analyst. I can also state categorically that Veteran lied in his later characterisation of other people's responses to my tweet. The reason I know it's a lie, that he purposely phrased it as, this is the tweet he claims is that the one that I cancelled the show over, or said he was racist over. He said he was making me seem racist over. And he said, literally nobody he's shown it to agrees with him. Clearly trying to imply that like multiple people don't agree, more than one person. No, he didn't just say the person he showed it to didn't agree because he didn't want to give away who it was. Now, this is another character flaw that Veteran has, as cited in the Monty case, by the way, where he will pretend to have privileged information he absolutely does not have so as to appear more informed than he is and have more industry contacts than he does. Well, bad luck for Veteran, because his bluff is now going to be called. Due to my past relationship with Twitter analyst types, as I referenced earlier, I've now had to become very paranoid about their behaviour and look for the warning signs that they're fucking me over and that they're basically dishonest and disingenuous in how they behave towards me. So I told you before about them basically admitting that they use me just for my platform. So what I do, this is a little tip for people out there, I employ a technique, which is actually a famous technique in history, if you go back through just political intrigue in history, but it's best known in pop culture from Game of Thrones Season 2, Episode 3, where Tyrion Lannister, who I think is the Hand of the King at the time, wants to know where the leak is in his trusted circle of people that he tells stuff to. So what he does is, he tells them this information can't get back to the Queen, Cersei, and he tells each of them, he tells Varys, Littlefinger, and Maester Pycelle a different variant of the same story, where the core element is true. He has plans for Cersei's children to send them away, but there's a different detail to each version he tells that act as a tracing beacon. That mean that when he then later hears the story back through someone else, he knows which one of them initially leaked it. And as a result, this allows him to figure out who then tells the Queen about his plans. Now, what Veteran couldn't have known is that I employed this technique when others asked why I was no longer working with Veteran. And I had only told one individual about that specific tweet. Nobody else in the entire world. Thus, I not only know who told him and thus also betrayed me, but they were the only individual who responded to that tweet to me and suggested to me that, yes, they disagreed. They didn't actually disagree directly. They just basically said, I don't think he was trying to paint he was a racist. And they tried to sort of like soft sell it and give like a case for Veteran as to why, maybe this is misunderstood or you phrased it a certain way. Like, only one person. Now, what's interesting about this, aside from the fact I caught Veteran in a lie and he stupidly exposed his friend in that scenario or his mutual acquaintance, and so now they're fucked as well, is later on, he did the same thing by making a tweet later where someone sort of suggested, like, if you continue this behaviour, you're not going to get picked up by a big org. He made a reply implying that Monty and I were dropped by Cloud9 for summoning Insight. Now, this is also a lie, and in Veteran's case, he has no knowledge of the situation whatsoever. We moved that series to our old channel, Insight on Esports, with a view to it being part of a potential forthcoming content concept, which I'm not ready to announce yet and is not even ready to launch. And by the way, and this is a fact, I am still paid the same money by the same company, Cloud9, for every episode of Summoning Insight. And if they think I'm lying, they are welcome to dispute it publicly and tell me I'm lying, because I'm not. So Veteran had no business talking about, then did not know what he was talking about, and essentially just copied a rumor he read on Reddit, I'm going to assume. He also said that he hadn't even mentioned me when he'd already publicly leaked our private conversation. And as a result, this is why he was suggesting it was unfair for me to just block him. Now, the justification he gave for leaking the DMs was he said, and I quote, yes, he, meaning me, is fine leaking DMs. No, I'm not talking about the Discord stuff with Leader, which wasn't even my leak, by the way. I don't know why people are that dim. This, for example, was in response to Slasher talking about PewDiePie's N-word gaffe. And he then linked a tweet I made where I leaked a Skype screenshot of a conversation with Slasher, once a respected esports journalist, showing that he had said what many could consider to be a racial slur. Now again, Veteran was not a friend of mine, has never discussed this topic with me, and has literally no knowledge of my past relationship with Slasher. But I will make a correction to my own statements here, which is what set up the precedent for him to call me out like this, which is that I did have a tweet years ago where I said, essentially, that anyone who leaked private conversations is scum, no exceptions. Now, my mistake, which I've since realised, was the last two words, no exceptions. What I realised in that Slasher incident, the only time, by the way, in 20 years I have ever leaked a private conversation without permission from the other side, is that as a general principle, it's a good one. I think it keeps the community healthier and allows people to trust each other. But the exception that needs to be made is when a serious wrong is being committed, and revealing as much is the only way to right it or to expose the wrongdoing of the person in question, such as the obvious extreme case would be a court case or criminal behaviour. Now, what Veteran doesn't know is that Slasher and I were internet friends once upon a time for many years, and we've been around in esports for decades, and we were then colleagues on Gamers in 2014, which I believe he might know. Now, I have talked to Slasher 10 times, 20 times more than I've ever talked to Veteran. I've even met Slasher on a number of occasions, and I knew him as an individual. I know details, secrets about his life that nobody in esports publicly knows to this day, and I don't reveal private secrets like that, so I've never revealed them despite some of the things he said and done against me in my career. Now, I forget if that incident was actually sparked by the PewDiePie racial slur gaffe in question, because Slasher himself so often preaching that holier-than-thou rhetoric on exactly that topic about practically any case of someone saying that word publicly or getting caught with a stupid slip-up on stream. But the point is, I did it in respect to Slasher saying, and with no exaggeration, that it's easy to just not say slurs like that. Because I knew that he himself, only a few years earlier, had not only said privately things like that, but had had to be told by his boss in an internal staff work meeting at OnGamers to stop saying that, and then in a Skype log with me, which I then searched for and found, had said that he needed to say the word more, basically revelled in it. And this is only a few years back, and basically like a year before I stopped talking to Slasher. So I exposed as much to show that if it was so easy, then why had he done it? And why had he never acknowledged that he'd done it anywhere? And that he was in no position to take a stance moralising against such stupid behaviour like that online, especially with a hidden and unacknowledged past to doing it himself, but just not being at the point in time where someone could cancel him. Now you know my side of the story and some of the facts and the context of why the show is gone forever. What Veteran did crossed the line he cannot return from. I won't associate with him, I won't work with him, I won't speak with him again. It was a good show, not my best, but it certainly had its niche, and I'll continue to produce LEC content as part of my new series, Thorin's Rotations. Sadly though, I will say, Veteran has soured me on doing platform vehicles for individuals again, hence it'll in future largely be shows that just revolve around me and a co-host depending on the topic and the region. This video was kindly supported by Jack Hanna, Dean Tanglis, Soliko, Bobby, Spencer Green, Istar, WhattaThings, Xinged, Alexander Rao, Tobias Bernasconi, JDubs, the Puyallup Tribe, Jensen Goh, and of course, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you'd like to ask a question in one of those monthly video AMAs I do. Do you want teasers? See who the upcoming guests are for my work. Maybe you want to be part of one of those donator discussions with me each month. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today by the description box link to Patreon below.